Are we live? Okay, we're live for day 4 of the Start Your Business Challenge. We're going to give it a minute here. The email is going out and give people a moment who are coming live to jump on. So we'll give it a moment here. And I like to check YouTube and make sure we're really live, because it has happened where I have talked to myself for a while. So today is an epic day. Live now. Here we go. Today is an epic day in the challenge. We're going over the financial steps. You know, I really set up this challenge to address everything that people ask ever. Hi, Fluorine Professional. Hi, Ramon. Ramon, sorry if I mispronounce your name. I guess my counter must be incorrect. There are people here. Great. So today is day 4. Just to recap, in day 1, we covered business plan, right? Which is a huge topic. And as you may have noticed by now, my inclination is to make things simple, because I've found that simple works and complicated doesn't work. So that's where I get my strategy. It's not a secret. It's just what I've learned over the years. So we're making things simple. So we made business planning simple in day 1. In day 2, we went over choosing a business type. So if you've ever been confused about LLC versus corporation versus that strategy and the taxes, watch day 2 for sure as well. Great training. Day 3, the exact steps to form your LLC, to form your corporation, to form any type of business, even nonprofit. Or to get yourself registered if you're a sole proprietor. And I recapped in day 3 the differences as well, because people were asking. And so today we're focusing on the financial steps to have your business set up right. If you want to go through the entire 7-day training, which is a super condensed, I mean, you could spend years at college. I have an MBA, right? This is not, you know, we just don't teach people about small businesses like this. And that's really how my whole business started. Was I was teaching college courses. I still teach college courses. I enjoy teaching college courses in accounting, taxes, and business software. And I would see small business owners come in to take an accounting class, and they're not learning what they need for a small business in college courses. You're just not. You're learning the bigger arena, the corporate arena. And that's part of the reason why, if you've had a negative experience with professionals, it's because professionals are trained to service corporations, big companies, and have that more high level expertise. So that's the issue. Hi, Greg. Wonderful. Your daughter's coming. Awesome. And all the training. So I'm putting the link. Hi, Leslie. Hi, Ricky. Welcome. Hi, Bo. Step-by-step instructions work well, sort of like business in a box. Yes, I've heard that. I think that's someone's program. So I put the link. If you haven't already registered, you can access the prior trainings, and I have cheat sheets in there as well. And today we're doing the finance, which of course, the best way to say it is I'm going to answer all the questions that people have. And you can put your questions in. I may not answer them as I go, because it will kind of mess me up getting through the content, but I will go back through them all and answer your questions. So today is a really epic day. I'm going to share my screen with you, and we're going to go through the e-course where I have the steps for getting your finances set up for today. And in talking about the finances, we'll also be looking at the other thing I give away for free, which is a basic accounting and tax template. So we'll be talking about that as well. And I'll be showing you the difference between the free version and my paid version. Basically, as I created these things, I created the basics first for people. And then the more I got into it, and then made what people needed, kind of the deeper level, really I made an alternative to things like QuickBooks, right? Like I didn't think that QuickBooks, I avoid QuickBooks. We'll get to that. We'll get to all these steps here in one moment. So I'm going to share my screen with you and we'll go through the steps to get your business finance set up. And again, as always, we'll keep it simple. So no worries on that note. Let's see here. Okay, it's going to be a little jumbly for a second, or I will pop this out and now I'm going to share with you. And this is just inside the training. Here we go. Cool. Okay. Again, feel free to post your questions as we go here. So this is in the course. We're up to day 4, financial steps to get started. And this can really save you a lot of time. And if you have more than one owner in your business, this stuff is just critical. Just to learn it, get it over with. It's worth investing the time of this training for the entire course. One thing I'll just mention before I jump in here, a lot of times I see people selling programs to help people do something. And so often people have a negative experience with those because they're teaching this very specific route, right? They're really deep in the nuts and bolts of a strategy and a plan. They're not really helping people understand the bigger picture and putting things in context, learning how to make decisions, learning how to have the finances, the legal, like all that strategized. And then you find a training that actually aligns with what you've already decided is the right path for you. Or, you're learning about paths, but at least you have that bigger picture strategy and knowing. So that's really what this course is all about, right? And that's why I made it free, because I think everyone needs this. I really believe that as more and more people follow the inspiration that they truly have, when they see something, you've learned your expertise, you see a way to do it better, you see something wrong with the world, you want to make a difference, it's something you're passionate about, it's something you really feel called to do, as more and more of us learn how to use the tools that we have at our disposal to make that happen, I really believe that we are changing the world for the better. So that's my personal belief system and why I made this challenge free. Okay, so now we'll jump into the financial steps here. And again, even if you already have a business, these steps might apply to you if you didn't follow them, if you got confused somewhere, if you weren't sure about things. So we'll jump in. So we're picking up where we left off in step 3 of forming your business. Once you get the state confirmation that your LLC or corporation has been registered, or if you're a sole proprietor, that your business was registered, or you could just, apply any of these steps, but that's kind of where we're picking up. So the first thing is an employer identification number. And we touched on this in day 3, so I won't go into too much depth. But a lot of people don't realize EIN stands for employer identification number. The only reason you need an employer identification number or are required to get one is if you hire employees or if you have 2 or more business owners. Otherwise, as sole proprietor, self-employed, you would use your social security number as the identifying number for your business federally. Otherwise, you can use an employer identification number. Can you get an EIN even if you're a sole proprietor, or single member LLC? Yes, of course, because you could have employees. So you don't need to pay for an EIN. You just come over here to good old Google, employer identification number, irs.gov, apply. I probably would have put apply first if I was doing it again. Now skip all these ads that want to charge you. You would give them all the information and then they would fill out the form. You might as well do it yourself, but skip over everything with an ad. And you see here the first result, irs.gov. That's how you know you're at the IRS. Always check for that for other things as well. Apply for an employer EIN number online. There we go. So you come in here and oddly enough, yes, they have hours of operation, 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. EST. So you won't be able to use the tool outside of that time. And I won't go through these steps in detail. Actually, I believe there's a video on my YouTube channel going through this in detail. But you just click apply online and you're going to answer a bunch of questions and voila, they will give you an EIN number just like that. No waiting. Whereas if you use one of those softwares and pay, then you'll have to wait. So it's much easier to just do it yourself. Okay, so then the next step is setting up separate bank accounts and separate credit card accounts. If you're a sole proprietor, you don't have to have a separate bank account, but it's still nice if you have big plans for your business and you'd like to keep things separate. The great thing about keeping things separate is that then, you know, you go to buy something and you go, okay, you know what? I'll separate this purchase out and use my business card for these supplies that are really for my business. And I probably would have missed that deduction. You know, you can intentionally use the business cards for the business. For every other type of business, it's required that the business owns separate bank and credit card accounts, right? That is required in those cases. Because everything, remember back from the beginning, a business is a separate entity. And so that entity owns its bank and credit card accounts. And to keep it separate from you personally, you wouldn't have a personal account that some random business that you're working for is using, right? That would be weird. That's called commingling of funds. And that's one of the things that makes an LLC not exist in the event that you're sued. So it's keeping it really separate from the owner is part of a good, it's beneficial to you as well, right? I don't recommend just doing it because of the legal reasons that may never matter. For you personally, it's helpful to keep it separate on top of the legal requirement, as well as from a tax perspective. Tax and legal require that. Okay, no questions on those ones? Cool. So our next step, yes, you have your separate accounts. And again, if you're sole proprietor, you might just designate, I'm just going to set up a separate credit card and a separate bank account just to use, even though it's under my personal name. For a business, you want the business to actually open those separate accounts for all of our other types of businesses. And then it's really important to keep that separation. One caveat I'll throw in there, can you reimburse yourself from the business? Yes, but it's a very detailed process. You need to keep your personal receipt. You need to give that receipt to the business. It needs to be put in the business records, and then the business pays you for that exact amount. So it's a process to be reimbursed. I'll come back to that later on. So to get started with accounting, I recommend, you can see here, I have used the business spreadsheet template. So that's a spreadsheet that I give away for free. It's a basic accounting template. And then there's an LLC version, which is just a reconciliation. And I'm going to show you that right now. We'll take a quick peek at it, because for some people, this might be too basic, okay? So let's see, I'm gonna have to share the one that I'm on. So this might get a little weird for a second. There we go. Now, I can't check, but you should be seeing the spreadsheet template. And if you hear what sounds like the crying baby, it is peacocks outside this development. There are tons of peacocks and they scream like a cat / baby. I've heard them in the background on some of my videos, so I figured I would mention that. Okay, so let's see here. So this is the free one, business spreadsheet template. I give this away. And we'll start with the sole proprietor. The reason this is basic is because it's just a place for you to put in some income items, which you could just use one income, and keep track of the amounts by month, and expenses. You just type in any expense that you have related to the business, anything that you spend money on that you wouldn't have spent if you weren't in business is generally gonna go here. We'll talk about a few exceptions later, but the difference with that exception is that they're personal in nature. So if there's anything personal, then additional rules will apply, such as eating, your home, your car, right? But as long as it's a business related, you're only spending this money because of business, there's no personal benefit, like having your nails on all day, right? Like there's no personal benefit. It's a business expense. List those out and keep track of the amounts. Now, this is not a very sophisticated accounting record, but it's enough if you're just getting started and you just need to keep track of those income and expense items. A lot of people use this when they're getting caught up, right? And going month by month to get their income and expenses organized for the year. The difference with the LLC version is that there's a bank reconciliation because you should be reconciling your accounts. But this is still a very simple version, and it's fine if that's where you're at. You know, there's a 1-hour training for the business spreadsheet template. If you're just getting started, if you have very little going on, this is all you need. Take that training. But if you actually want to get everything right, this training isn't really going to be enough. The truth is. But the fact of the matter is most people don't actually care. Like if you only have a few things going on, you might not care about getting everything right. You know what I mean? You might, so at least this gives you the base foundation of what I could give people in an hour, since there's a lot of people in that position that just needed something to get that done. You'll kind of know if you go through that training and you're like, but I want to really understand everything and know more, then that's where my other training comes in. So this is my paid training, Master Your Accounting and Taxes. And I'll show you what the difference is. And we'll be adding some more videos into our class. Let's see. That's my separate template, so I can't show you that. But this training walks you through. So this is like advanced accounting, right? So beginner accounting is just getting set up. You can use the free template. There's other things in the free template as well, such as calculating quarterly taxes and end of year tax totals. So the different items, the different titles you use for your income and your expense account, this is just a convenient thing that lets you total them up under tax categories on Schedule C. Okay, so very useful tool. But the thing is if you are at a place where you have more going on or you just want to get everything right, then of course I could only cover so much in there. And that's really where my paid course, Master Your Accounting and Taxes, comes in. And this, as you can see, there's a bunch of steps. Like this is everything for accounting setup. And when we go into something like entering your transactions, we then have all these trainings for different ways of entering everything and getting everything really correct. So it comes down to a personal preference. You know what I'm saying? Like some people just want to get the numbers, like this is all they need and they're done. Like they just, okay, list out my income, list out my expenses, track what's going in and out of the account if you're an LLC, and I'm done. Now, is there more to be correct? Yes, there is, and that's what the full course is. But I just realized that a lot of people who are contractors and who just need to get by are using this. And it's what I started using when I first started working for myself as well. Now, I'll just show you the difference in the accounting template so that like when you're ready to upgrade, let's presume your business does well, you have a big vision, things go great, right? You're advancing. You're going to upgrade at some point either into accounting software or something like my course using a spreadsheet template. And so with these, if you have multiple accounts, which a lot of people use multiple accounts, these are set up for you to enter in your accounts, to set up your accounts by account types. You learn about all that in my Master Your Accounting course. You then enter your transactions for each credit card, liability account, and bank account. And then there's bank reconciliations, balance sheet, which is a report that as you get going, you want to be aware of. The other thing that this does, which is important from an accounting perspective, is it lets you add an additional layer of categorization to know how profitable you are based on whatever category makes sense to you. So a lot of contractors use this to track their jobs. In addition to income and expense categories, they also enter their jobs so that they're able to actually know where they stand profitably for their jobs. And of course, the balance sheet is something that doesn't apply to sole proprietors, only separate businesses like the LLC and corporations. So that's the more advanced accounting. Let me see here. I'm going to go back. I'm going to stop sharing. See if anyone has any questions on that, because I could not see you. Track the basis. Basis, yes. So if you mean basis, like basis for partners in like multi-member LLCs, yeah, that's all definitely not covered in the free training. That's like more than an hour of, yeah. So all that's covered in my Master Your Accounting course. Will the training in the course involve the complete accounting cycle? So that's like an accounting. So no, I definitely don't teach business owners the accounting cycle because it's just not really relevant to them. Ricky, what I'm going over right now, it's a great question. We'll go back to my checklist here in the course. So it's just not really relevant. I'm covering that in a simpler, easier to understand way. So like these are the setup steps. And then, yes, at the end, I will get to the accounting cycle, but it's not going to sound the way it sounds in textbooks. It's going to sound the way it sounds in real life for business owners. So great question. I will come back to that. Will you cover legal loophole advantages, sensible shortcuts, and streamlining the best business software email templates? Well, that was a lot of questions, Bo, and that's also subjective. So yes, I do think that I give you the best information for sure. That's why I do it. But at the end of the day, what saves you time and money is moving your business forward and focusing on what you do in your business. Here's the thing, as I often explain, because I've covered all that already. So go back to day 1, 2, and 3. I've really already covered it. But we will be talking about software today. I will tell you the software I recommend. I recommend my Spreadsheet first and foremost. That's why I made it for small business owners. And but we are covering it. It's all here. Yeah, it's all here. Okay. So we covered beginning accounting and we covered advanced accounting. I skipped ahead to the advanced accounting. We'll come back to that. I showed you the difference between my free template, so you really have everything you need to get going. Step 6 is a payment processor. So this lets you accept payments, and you've probably heard of these, Square or Stripe. They're very easy to set up. You enter your bank information, right? And they sync with your bank, and it allows you to accept all credit card payments. They all charge about 2.9%. If you were to spend hours researching the best payment processor, then I would say go back to day 1, or any software for that matter. I would highly recommend going back to day 1 because I would say that you haven't found the thing that you want to do, that you really want to do, or you need to spend some more time focusing on it. And it's a great point. It's a great point because people get so distracted and hung up in like, what should I use and blah, blah, blah. That's a distraction from taking the actions to move forward. So it's a great point because so many people spend so much time on that and so much time switching. I've been guilty of it myself too, of course. I do the same things everyone does. So I've done it as well, and I can guarantee you it's always kind of a waste of time. It's not a money-making activity. I'm sure you've heard that phrase. Choosing the right software is not going to make or break nothing makes or breaks your business other than knowing what you're selling and why people want it. And we will be talking about that tomorrow in Sales Secrets. So we'll get there. So setting up a payment processor is critical. The next step 7, some sort of app, which you can do on your phone if you're like an in-person local services type of business, or online if you're using, if you're doing services online through Zoom or something like that. You can set up an invoicing app. Square has great invoicing already, and they do the Square reader, and you can take payment by swiping on your phone. There's others. There's plenty of others, but I wouldn't. I would take one of the main ones, or spend a little bit of time and go with the one you want. But just keep in mind that, like, if you actually want to do the business that you're starting, then you would be focused on getting to doing it. And so that's what we'll talk a lot more about tomorrow in sales, because sales comes down to what you're selling and actually defining that in a way that people connect with it. So we'll talk about that more tomorrow. So you might need an invoicing app. You might just be able to use Square or Stripe directly. I mean, you can take someone's credit card and enter their information directly. Square, like I said, has invoicing, but there are a lot of third-party apps that people like, and I'll come back to those apps in one moment. The next one is a really common one. So you have some income coming into the business, you have expenses going out of the business. How do you pay yourself? So in every type of business, you can take money out of the business. Like, you can just take the money out. Any owner, barring in a partnership, the partnership agreement. So let's go back to our cheat sheet under day 2. So we'll take it step by step. In a sole proprietor, single member LLC, right? Because those are the same for taxes. They pay themselves. So okay, sole proprietor and single member LLC are kind of separate. We'll start with sole proprietor. Sole proprietor, and it's the same thing for single member LLC, but we're going to track it in the records. So in both of these cases, if you set up a bank account, separate bank account, you just take the money out. It's actually very interesting how much people ask this question, because generally you just take the money out. That's it. That's how you pay yourself. You're not going to even really keep track of it in a sole proprietor. In a single member LLC or a multi-member LLC, you're going to keep track of it as draws. And we talked about this yesterday, and I'll come back to the draws in a second. So with partnerships, multi-member LLCs, the owners can take draws out of the business and put money into the business. And that's all tracked under what's called owner's equity for each owner. They have an owner capital account, which is money. So you're tracking the money you put in and the money you take out. Now, in the corporation, and if you choose S corporation, because like we covered in day 2, S corporation was an election for corporations to be taxed as a sole proprietor or LLC flow through. So that's why it doesn't really make sense why LLCs are electing S Corp status. They're not getting any benefit, but because the S Corp was made for the corporation, owners being taxed as an S Corp or corporations have to pay themselves as W-2 employees. In all of our other types of business options here, you cannot pay yourself as a W-2 employee, okay? So you have to just take that money out of the business. You can write yourself a check. You can do a bank transfer. In fact, I recommend setting up your bank accounts at the same bank so that you can really easily do transfers, which can be helpful if you're just getting the business started and you don't have too much money, right? It's like, oh, but I need that money. So put it into the business bank account, transfer it over into your personal. And that way you'll be able to record your sales when they come in. You have that paper trail, sales coming in and then transfer going out to you. So that's how you pay yourself. It's just a matter of tracking it in your owner draw account. Now, what happens later for taxes? Well, in the sole proprietor, single member LLC, you're taxed on the net income of your business. All of these questions that people are tempted to ask, like, can I leave the money in the business? The way accounting works, it doesn't work that way. So, for example, we'll keep going here. So LLCs tax just like multi-member tax, just like a partnership. In a partnership, everything is based on the owner operating agreement, like we talked about yesterday. So in that operating agreement, it says if anyone is receiving a regular payment, and all that is handled at the end of the year on their Schedule K-1. So it's just a matter of being in agreement with the owners about what money is being taken out. And on a caveat, I'm going to be doing a live stream about development companies and making sure that you, and it applies for any partnership. If you're going to go down that route, and I know I discouraged people from it in yesterday and the day before's training, if you're going to do it, be sure to define how money moves in and out of the bank accounts. Can partners take money out? Who needs to put money in? When? Like, you want to be super specific about those things. Otherwise, anything can happen. Like, it's definable. That piece is very definable. And any partner could just take money out, like if it's not defined clearly. So essentially, it's based on the agreement of people. That's how you pay yourself. You pay yourself how you, as owners, agreed to pay yourself. In the corporation, and if you elect S Corp status, you have to pay yourself as a W-2 employee. There's a lot of steps that go into that, and I have trainings for that on my website under courses. Okay, so that's all. Do check out the other trainings. If you skip those, it will be helpful to follow these trainings day by day, okay? So let's go back to day 4. Questions on where we're at? Nothing yet. Okay. So you've got your accounting set up. You can set up a basic template just to keep track of any expenses that are going out, which is anything related to the business. Record any income that's come in, any sales you've gotten at all, right? And then if you're a separate business, so anyone other than a sole proprietor, you need to also keep track of money you're putting into the business and money you're taking out of the business. And that's why on my free template, under the bank reconciliation, there's under bank increases, bank decreases, and then we have the ending balance each month. It's a bank reconciliation worksheet. There's capital, owner contributions for increases, and capital, owner withdrawals for bank decreases. In my paid template, it works a little different, so I won't go into that here because it's all covered in the course for the upgraded auto template. But that's why that's accounted for, because when you're accounting for all of the activity that goes on in the business, of course, money is going to be moved in and out of the bank account. That's how you pay yourself. You just pay yourself. And of course, you want to keep track of it if you're anything other than a sole proprietor. Great question, Raymond. Does it matter how much you pay yourself? The only, so no, like, of course, you're limited by the success of the business as to how much you pay yourself. The only times that it is limited, sorry about that. The only time what you pay yourself would be limited is if you are if you're, I'm just going back to the cheat sheet here. If you're in a multi-owner business, if you're LLC or partnership with multi-owners, it's based on the operating agreement. So whatever was agreed upon, that would be the one limitation. As far as for corporations and S Corps, yes, it does matter what you pay yourself. what you pay yourself is determined by what someone would be paid in that type of position regularly. Like, what would someone be paid for that type of position in your industry, in your location? What would the pay be? And so I actually have an entire template in my paying workers and owners course for S Corps, because it is a process, which is why I can confidently say that when an LLC elects S Corp status, it always costs more money, which is ironic, right? Because so many people are paying for the S Corp thinking it saves them taxes. And some, you know, many professionals are taking that at face value. I did too. Everyone said it. I thought, yeah, it saves taxes somehow. But then when I did out the spreadsheet template for different comparisons for clients, we realized, and I'm an expert, and my background is an expert in partnership pyramids. And so it became so clear, you know, the S Corp was to allow, and other professional, high-level professionals that I'm friends with in industry, I mean, everyone agrees, everyone knows, regardless of the fact that a lot of tax professionals are still encouraging people to elect S Corp status, it's how they're making money, right? So they want it to be true that the S Corp saves you money, right? Because then they get to charge you for the S Corp, and they get to charge you monthly for payroll. Look, the only reason to go with the S Corp is if you want to pay yourself as a W-2, and if you want to pay yourself reasonable compensation, it's called. So in a corporation, in S Corp, you do have to pay yourself reasonable compensation. This is why, if what you're creating in the world fits a nonprofit structure better than a corporation, you can, this is why I always like to point out, you can still make millions of dollars for bringing value into the world in a nonprofit, because a nonprofit, as I explained in day 2, is very much like a corporation, only instead of shareholders, there are donors. And as the founder, president, or whatever your role is, you're paid based on what would someone normally be paid in this position in your location. So if it's a big successful venture, you're going to be paid what 6 people are paid who run or found successful ventures. So you can still be paid substantial sums of money. So don't let that stop you from bringing value to an area. Okay. So let's head back here to step 4. I think I answered that question. So basically, yeah, if you're a corporation, there's a lot more that goes into it. If you're a partnership, multi-member LLC, it's just a matter of defining it clearly. Other than that, single member LLC, sole proprietor, you pay yourself however you want, whenever you want. It doesn't affect taxes. It doesn't affect taxes for the sole proprietor. It doesn't affect taxes for the multi-member LLC. It doesn't affect taxes for the partnership. It doesn't affect taxes for the S Corp. Typically, because in all of these situations, you are taxed based on the net income of the business. Your basis, your investment in the company is handled separately. And that is your capital account, right? What you put in, if you invested money when you formed the business, and then the portion, your share of the taxes each year increase your basis. Your withdrawals from the business are not taxed. They just decrease your basis. Now, if you were to withdraw more than your basis, then yes, that's when you're taxed. And that's why basis really applies when people are moving stuff around, when there's investors involved, people who are in just for the investment. Okay, so I won't go deeper on that. So we've got paying yourself. And of course, there's a lot in there, right? Because then we get into the tax implications. So it's a big rabbit hole. I have an entire course on that. But it only really gets complicated for those of you who are corporations or electing S Corp status, which is why I avoid it, especially since I explained the reason people are electing S Corp status isn't actually true. Okay, advanced accounting. So once you've been kind of running your business for a bit, you may be interested in more stuff about accounting. Now, I told you I would come back to the things that were part personal that you get a tax deduction for, so you know what to keep track of right now as you're getting started. So these are called self-employed write-offs. In partnerships and multi-member LLCs, you can deduct these things, but you got to keep in mind they weren't meant for you. So you have to actually have language in your operating agreement, and I talked about this yesterday or the day before, that says that you can deduct these business expenses. So the first is a mileage log. So when it comes to your personal vehicle, you don't get to charge gas and say this gas qualifies as business. You don't do that. You keep if the vehicle is owned by you personally, and if you use the vehicle for personal purposes, you want to own it personally. Don't have the business buy it because it's a pain. Only have the business buy a vehicle directly if it's going to be pretty much used 100% for business. Otherwise, you buy your vehicle personally, then you keep track during the year of your odometer and your business miles driven. Okay? So you need to keep a mileage log. If you drive a lot, you might try an app like MileIQ is the one I've recommended, MileIQ. Or you can set up a simple mileage log. And I actually have a video on my channel of a worksheet that's included in my Master Your Accounting and Taxes course that goes over how to track how to keep track of it, which I'll just show you now because you can always set up something like this yourself pretty easily too. So let's see. So in my course, we'll go to part personal, part business expenses. These are our self-employed write-offs. Here's my worksheet. Okay, so mileage log, all you need for a mileage log is a listing of each drive. You put the date, the business purpose, the location, and you do, if you're ever audited and asked for a mileage log, it should include the start and stop of the trip under the odometer rating. And then that gives you a total amount of miles for that trip. In this case, it was 4 miles. If you have things like parking and toll expenses while you're on a business trip, those you can pay for under the business account because those are direct business expenses. They're not related to the car, really, right? They're related to your business purpose. And so those are always deductible under your business. But the mileage is times the standard mileage rate, the method I recommend using. There's 2 methods. And that's a decent deduction, 58 cents per mile. So it ends up being a very worthwhile deduction, but you do need to know about the mileage log to keep track of those business miles. Keep all of your vehicle expenses under you personally, and then you just get to take that extra deduction on your tax return, okay? Now, there is another one called that. Now, just to be clear, there is another method called the actual expense method where you take all of those actual expenses, but I don't find it to be worth it. I find that using the standard mileage log method, standard mileage rate method is beneficial. And in the long run, if you're going to own the car for a few years, it's more beneficial because you can't switch methods once you take depreciation. Once you use the actual method, you can't use this method. Okay, for the home office, if you use an area in your home related to business, a lot of people will ask, like, can I reimburse myself? No, as a self-employed taxpayer, you're just going to keep track of your expenses related to the home. So you can see this is a monthly setup, just like my free template. You could use that as a guide to set something like this up. And you're going to keep track of all of your expenses for the house: electric, gas, water, sewer, repairs and maintenance. And then, of course, the value of the house. If you own the house, what you paid for it, that's basis, just like we were talking about with businesses, what you paid for it, the asset. So you'll either take depreciation if you own the house, or you'll deduct your rent payments, a portion of rent payments. And so there's just these two categories of expenses to be aware about. Indirect expenses, which are for the whole house, and direct expenses, which are any cost related to the actual home office area itself, okay? And then you get to deduct these indirect expenses based on the square footage of your home office to the entire location. When you do your taxes yourself, like in DIY tax software, all of those questions are asked. And in the free template, I believe, yes, down here, I actually have it set up for you to enter your information for the self-employed write-offs as well. So that's a getting started point. Okay, so the self-employed write-offs are something to keep in mind in addition to, you know, your regular accounting, which is everything directly related to the business. When it comes to accounting software, what I don't recommend is QuickBooks. Oh, I see some questions. I'll come back in one moment. I don't recommend QuickBooks or anything owned by Intuit. There's a separate video on YouTube coming out, kind of a different style video for me where I break down Intuit and why I'm passionate about not supporting them and how they make our tax system more complicated. So I don't recommend QuickBooks. Xero, on the other hand, I do recommend. Xero's mission was to be better than QuickBooks, and I think that they have done a fabulous job. So if you're going to go software route, then I do recommend Xero. I am going to be doing and they have something for everyone. They have an income expense tracker for the self-employed, and then they have real accounting software for when you get to that point that you need accounting software. And that's a good distinction, right? We'll talk more about that in one moment when we get to this one. Step 10 is to understand what a customer resource management software is, often called CRM. And a CRM might include being able to email people, but that's not an email autoresponder. And we'll be talking about that tomorrow with the online world. But a CRM is generally a software that's going to be specific to your line of business. Okay. So yeah, if you're online, you might be interested in a big online CRM like Infusionsoft. But CRMs have really changed over the years because the tech industry has boomed. Why? Because it doesn't cost them anything to have another client, right? Once they set up a software and they're facilitating that, the cost of an additional person are so low that it's just really easy for them to make all sorts of CRMs. So it's a good thing. If you're in, an example would be Mind Valley for health-related professionals doing classes and services. So you may want to look at your industry, like there are good ones for contractors, and see what you find if you need it. So if you're just getting started, like I would really wait until you have a need that you need to fill. Because here's the thing, these softwares are never going to be perfect. They're never going to do everything you want it to do. I guarantee, pinky swear, they will never do, not one of them will ever do everything you want it to do. So you ought to know what you really want the software to do. So if you're not at a point where you need something like that, I'd recommend focusing on tomorrow's training and doing whatever it is your business is meant to do, working with clients or selling the product, no matter what it is, right? Like moving forward with sales until you figure out what it is that you need. Otherwise, I can promise you 99.99% of the time, purchasing something like this, investigating something like this will be a waste of time. I promise. Okay. So, but otherwise, what a customer resource management tool does is it's going to facilitate, so it will integrate with your payment processor. It may say it includes accounting. it's always going to be any of those softwares that say they include accounting. It's always basic beginning accounting, like income and expenses. It's never full-blown accounting, because that's where accounting gets a lot more complicated. I've never seen ever a spreadsheet template that does what my spreadsheet template in my Master My Accounting and Taxes course does. And honestly, I can thank one of my initial students who really put the idea together, the structure of how it is now. He really helped with that to make it automated. So for example, real accounting records are going to have a balance sheet report, and you're going to be able to look at job profit reporting, and you're going to have all this additional information. So the reason I'm telling you this, and you can see all sorts of stuff in here, for recording sales tax, like whatever applies to you, there's going to be a template. The balance sheet is huge. It's the value of the business. And no CRM software is ever going to be a complete accounting record. So I just want to explain that. And probably no spreadsheet template either, with the exception of mine, unless people start following it, which is great. I have no problem with that. Okay, let's see. Questions. So basically covered the simple steps, right? Like getting a way to charge people, a way to take money, getting your account set up, the payment processor. Invoicing was optional, right? You know how to pay yourself. You're just going to take the money out. You know what to keep track of, and you know as your business takes off more, like what to do for the accounting, right? And then you know that as you go forward, identify what you'd really need help with. So like, for example, let's say someone who's a consultant online. Well, once you've had a few clients, obviously you're going to like to set something up so that people can schedule, right? I do not recommend getting too fancy if your goal is to provide a service and you want to be providing it now. You can use all of your Gmail contacts and what we'll cover tomorrow to get started selling something. So there's never a need to get too caught up or fancy with things before you have people paying for that stuff. So that's one thing I would emphasize. And then if you're already to that point where you are looking to systematize things more, then sit down and say, okay, well, what is the number one thing that I need to get, resolved? What's the number one problem? If it's scheduling, you just get specific first, because like I said, there's going to be a million options. They're all going to say they do everything, and none of them are going to do everything the way you want. So it's good to be aware of that. Okay. Tomorrow, there's sales secrets, which is where we're really going over what you're selling. And then there's the online world and building that into your strategy as a really big picture understanding of everything that the internet is currently offering us. So those are the next two trainings. I'm not sure which one comes first, but those are the next two. So let's see here. I've missed some questions. Great. So the accounting cycle, great. Let's come back to that. So all the accounting cycle is, that Ricky's talking about because he's a bookkeeper, is when you spend money, saving those receipts. And then making sure that that transaction gets entered into your record. Whether it's zero, you're using accounting software, if you have a bookkeeper, you need to take every receipt, write on it the business purpose, and get it into your filing system, get it to a bookkeeper if you're using a bookkeeper. A lot of times people hire bookkeepers thinking that they're going to take over everything, and they don't realize that they still have to do so much work to get everything to the bookkeeper. Here's my light, sorry. So that's why a lot of people end up in my course after they've struggled with a bookkeeper, because they don't have the system set up to keep track of all this. So all you want to do when you're getting started, and I'll add this section in, and I'll add a graphic from my Master Your Accounting and Tax course to our training. So you keep a documentation of every item of income or expense or those transfers. You just want to save a copy, a documentation of everything that happens in your business that affects value. Then you want to make sure that that's recorded in the accounting, and then that it's filed somewhere and saved. And best practice is to write the business purpose or reason or say, like document just what happened on that receipt. Okay? So great question. And then the last part of the accounting cycle would be looking at your reports, right? So I'll go back to my templates, the free one and the paid one. In the free one, you're just really looking at income minus expenses, right? Whether it's on the bank statement or on a simple template. This is both your accounting record and your report. Like I said, to be technically fully correct, yes, you would want something like accounting software or my course, which this covers everything, right? So here we have, like looking at the reports periodically is the end of the cycle. So we have an income statement, a balance sheet, but what's probably going to be most important, income statement is income minus expenses. Balance sheet is assets, what the business owns, bank accounts, plus fixed assets, so anything that's used in the business to make money, like not things that you're going to resell, right? Things that are used in the business to make money. So as a service provider, you may or may not have a lot of these. There's now a $2,500 de minimis rule for taxes. So generally for taxes, these things are all deducted anyways. But assets, everything the business owns, is equal to liabilities, everything the business owes, and owner's equity. And this is where we keep track of how the business has been doing. Retained earnings each year. So that's the net income coming from the income statement. Income minus expenses. So each year, a decrease in income, or an increase in income, or a decrease in income, a loss, is going to impact the value of the owners, right? And owner contributions, what the owner puts into the business, might have to increase, right? Because if there's a loss, right? So that's what the balance sheet is. And I'll also add in a balance sheet video that I have on YouTube that goes in depth into the balance sheet. But most people aren't going to get the most value from reviewing the balance sheet, but it is a good thing to understand because it's your net value in the business, not personally in this case. This would be in the business. Now, something like the job profit report, this is where you really get to look at individual, something more meaningful. Let's say you have 3 clients and you are spending money on some of those clients. Well, it would be nice to know what your net income is for all 3 of those. If you're a real estate agent and you have different clients, or maybe even each house sale, and you want to track your expenses and your net income from each. With services where there's not a large amount of costs, it's, the accounting can be, you can kind of, you need it less. The lower your profit margins are, the more you need the accounting and the more you need to know exactly what's going on, right? I mean, I always think it's beneficial to know the accounting, but to just know where you're at financially, I think that makes a big difference when it comes to finance. And just how well your business is doing, right? Because it's kind of a statement as far as your relationship to the business and how things are going, like you would want to know what's going on, right? So, will one of the topics in the course be about petty cash? So I'm not going to go into something like petty cash, but that's definitely covered in my Master Your Accounting and Tax course, yes. Can you change from an S corporation if you think it's not right one for you? Yeah, you can. And actually, I was just talking to someone about this, but yes, you can definitely end any entity with the IRS. And if you've made an election using the 8832, you can use the election again to elect differently. There are a lot of rules that go into that. But if you look at Form 8832, you can elect a different entity, yes. It's just that there's rules around it for each one, right? Which I've planned to do one on the S Corp on YouTube. I'm planning to do a End Your S Corp video, of course, since I'm so adamantly recommending it. Just for people's sanity and saving money. How does the U.S. effects on 100% foreign-owned LLC? Well, so what matters is its relation to the U.S., right? If you are a U.S. citizen as an owner, then if you meet the reporting requirements, if an account has more than 10,000, or if that entity that you own has more than 10,000, then you would be required to file that's on the individual basis when you're doing your taxes, which if you do DIY taxes, you're asked about that. If you hire someone, they should ask you about that. So it's just a reporting requirement. But if you're a US resident, you pay tax on all your income. It doesn't matter where it's sourced. Ricardo, I'm late, but I want to know if your partnership LLC would be set up in a certain way if one member is a W-2 employee and one member is not. If one member is a W-2 employee, Ricardo, that is against the rules. I did cover that. Partnerships, multi-member LLCs cannot be paid as W-2 employees under no conditions ever, ever, ever. That is the only reason to elect S Corp status and pay a little more in costs, is to be able to pay an owner as a W-2. Only under the corporate structure can you do that. That's why for an LLC to be taxed as an S Corp, you first elect to be taxed as a corporation and then as an S Corp. Thanks, Malak3417. We of course help an LLC one owner. Yeah, if you mean the paid course, it's definitely for single member LLCs. Yes, and it's just I have that free template, but then the course is a far more in depth, going into each of these areas in detail. Sorry, 250K revenue, decide how to compensate first employee who will grow business as a manager. We have a unique model and need guidance in this area. Well, if you have specific stuff, you can use, I'll put in I believe I have times this week if you book their paid meetings, but if you want a paid meeting with me, you can check that out. But what I would say is, what I like to do is first ask the person what they want to be paid. Because I don't really want someone who doesn't want to be paid what I'm paying them. You know what I mean? So I would want to know, I mean, when you put an ad out and there's a pay scale in it, you kind of people, you know, but I would say it really comes down to deciding what you can afford and what you can pay and what is standard. And do you want to pay standard rates, or do you want to pay a little above standard rates? Like, decide what you want to do, what you really feel good about, and then make sure that that person feels good about it too. That's my recommendation. Because remember, people, you have to be able to trust people, right? People can work and not be trying, or like, people get the pay that they believe they deserve is generally, even if it's subconscious, they are going to get the pay that they deserve. They work less if they're being paid low rate. So it's like, you got to really work that out, right? And I think just being really genuine. Of course, if you want to get into like how to compensate with the business and all that, that's something that you could book a meeting with me if you want help with. Raymond, what do you know about FreshBooks? So generally those, great question, FreshBooks, Wave, they are income expense processors, and they're generally a waste of time. They don't even do things like there are just many little things that they don't do. And like I said, they're an income expense tracker. So they're just like my free template, right? They're just tracking income and expense. They're not the complete, they don't have the balance sheet. They don't keep track of assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. That's where things get more complicated. So I typically don't recommend those things at all. And most people I know who've tried them don't actually use them. So I'd recommend, if you're going to do that, you might as well just use my free template. If you like it, great. But generally, like, you have to categorize. I know in Wave, and I believe FreshBooks was the same, you actually have to like categorize your expenses every time. It doesn't remember the category you chose, which is just a complete waste of time. Every accounting software does that. So they're just pretty limited. And like I said, they're not complete records. So it's correct if you're a sole proprietor, but not if you're an LLC, not if you're a corporation or a S Corp. So let alone partnership. And guys, once you, like a single member LLC, like, yes, you should do everything correctly. You're a separate business. But for taxes, you're self-employed. So you're still, from the tax perspective, only required to have what a sole proprietor has, which is income and expense items. However, once you have partners, multi-member LLC and partners, you have to report, you have to give them a Schedule K-1. You need to know what each owner's investment is. You need to have complete records, which includes capital accounts for each person. And so then you could never use an income expense tracker. You should definitely be using a full-blown accounting software, like Xero is the one I recommend. Certainly QuickBooks, but QuickBooks is not user-friendly DIY. Accounting software is generally not a DIY thing. If one is going to be DIY, Xero is it. A lot of like the little companies that pop up, those aren't complete software. And if they are, it's limited. So if it works for you, great. Like if you're like, this is what I want to do it. But generally, they're not really worth the time, unfortunately. Greg, do you recommend a certain bank or credit union to avoid for starting a business? So not to avoid, unfortunately, I like the big banks. I like American Express. American Express did some really good things for people in the pandemic. They did stuff other credit cards didn't do. But generally, like I've had better experience with people using the bigger banks. And I hate that because I prefer to support smaller, non-corporate, non-big company stuff. But the truth is that, unfortunately, they tend to have better resources. Now, like personally, I use a credit union, and that's just kind of like my overall experience from working with people and kind of overall. I use a credit union, and actually my credit union, and I recommend this for everyone financially, use the tools that they have in there to, like, you can connect all of your accounts. My credit union has all of these resources. And they were always there, but I didn't use them for a long time because I just, I have my own accounting records, and I keep a spreadsheet template and accounting software. Because you're never going to know if you're correct, right? Like so typically what I recommend for people if you're upgrading is to do my course so that you actually get set up right. Even if you're not planning on doing the accounting yourself forever, like you want to learn it and understand it so that you can facilitate it. So that's what my course is for. Like you might not use a spreadsheet forever, but at least you've got it set up, and then you have a check while you start using a software. You can compare the reports and make sure that you're getting the same thing for a while before you maybe stop using the spreadsheet and go 100% with the software and a bookkeeper. Okay, I think I got off on a tangent from banks, but yeah, I have so many banks pitching me to promote. I have so many softwares and people pitching me to promote their stuff. But the problem is I have to like it, of course. And so there was this bank that I kind of really liked. Their focus is small business, and they just weren't very forward. They just didn't really wow me. They were just focused on small business. So I wanted to like them. The owner was going to talk to me about being more for something, standing for something. But anyways, So yeah, I don't have huge, as far as banks, avoid Wells Fargo. That is for loans, like avoid Wells Fargo. That's my experience. Stay away from Wells Fargo. They just have very corrupt practices, which they all kind of do, but I've just seen so many things with Wells Fargo. That is one to avoid. Okay, Leslie, thank you so much for the amazing info. I'm so glad you enjoyed it, Leslie. Thanks for coming and commenting. D, do you have any tips on meeting the requirements to have the EIDL forgivable for single member LLC? Yes, you are going to love what I say next. As a single member LLC, you qualified based on your average monthly net income, 2.5 times your average monthly income. The rules that you are looking at to know if your loan is forgivable are for businesses with employees where they needed to make sure that they put the money where it was supposed to go, which was as paychecks to employees. They don't apply to you. You took your paycheck. So when you talk to the bank and they ask you for that information, you say nicely, but I just got my paycheck. I'm self-employed. I just got my paycheck. So what do I need to show you? It was just my paycheck. And if you use my PPP spreadsheet template, that is what you could give them for documentation. It calculates the amount you applied for. So make sure that it reports the amount you applied for. That should have been based on 2.5 times your average net income. And so just make sure you have that record, provide that, and you're good. Thanks, Grover. I rock. Thanks for the info. Thank you. You're super nice. Sorry, I got a little bunch of questions came in here. Greg, thank you so much. It's a credit union and you're tracking. Cool. Yeah, they have some great tools in the bank platforms these days, so definitely use those. Hello, you have great info. Thanks, ABC1. Buster Bubble. Andrea, hi. Hi, Amanda. Can I get a receipt and the coupon code? Yes. My assistant will reply to you. We get a lot of emails, so it does take us time to go through email. Bubble. If someone with a % interest in a corporation decided to take money out of the corporate bank account, what type of income is this? If someone with an interest, so when you say interest in a corporation, typically that's the language used for like a partnership or a multi-member LLC, right? Having an interest in the business. With a corporation, you're owning a portion of the shares, right? So if someone with a % interest in the corp, so if someone owns a portion of the shares, but the reason it's not normally expressed that way in a corporation is because the corporation can issue more shares and can buy back shares. So so that's why it's not necessarily a percentage, because the percentage can change. So I think what you're asking about is draws, and no, employees don't have draw accounts. But the shareholder, if the shareholder took the money out, then it's not income. You would just keep track of it in relation to the investment, just like I talked about with basis. That question gets a little detailed. Corporations are not generally something I recommend doing on your own. Like that kind of crosses the line. That's why we have the LLC, is because corporations get way more complicated and LLCs make them simpler so that a single human can handle it. Corporations, that's really where the LLC came from, because people were doing corporations and they're just way too complicated, way too much coming out of that. Andrea, thanks, Amanda. I finally managed to persuade my husband to let me file using Free Tax USA. You filed yesterday. Great, you're early. Awesome. Okay. Good info. Awesome, guys. Well, thanks for the comments. That's all for day 4 of the finance setup for your business. I thought it was more complicated. Okay, cool. D, yes, great. I was going to say the corporation question shouldn't get that response, but that was for the ED. Yes, if you don't have employees, all of that criteria is not going to apply to you. It's just because you got your paycheck. So, and you don't pay employees, so you can't show you paid employees. Just, you might want to, if you have a separate business account, withdraw the money and transfer it to your personal account and say you paid yourself. Great. And just using that template, I think that it's going to, once we get there and once the professionals are actually going over PPP forgiveness with people, they're going to end up going, okay, single member LLCs and sole proprietors, that people that don't have their employees don't really have anything to document. The whole point was to make sure people paid employees, which didn't work. Let's be real. So it's really like a business thing anyways. So anyways, okay, guys, that's all. If you're new, check out from the beginning. Today was a big day. I'm going to add some more resources to the free training for today. And yeah, do start over from the beginning if you're new. Let's see, what are we doing? Which one is tomorrow? Tomorrow is day 5, must know sales secrets that apply for any industry and every type of business. Yeah, so I really want to simplify that like I simplify everything as my goal. Selling and getting whatever it is you're doing out there can be really challenging. And so we're really going to simplify selling, whether it really doesn't matter what industry you're in, or whether you're trying to start a service. Getting really clear about what we cover tomorrow, it will really be an interactive exercise where I walk you through doing an exercise of defining the things you're selling. So we'll talk about it then. Last question, Grover, I invested in hemp as an LLC partner and we've had a loss. How do we file down our taxes? Well, you enter your Schedule K-1 in your individual tax return. That's how you would file it. And then you'd answer the questions in the software and it will determine how it's treated. Generally, if you worked in the business, then that would be deductible. If you didn't work in the business, it's going to be passive and it's limited to $3,000 a year, but you can offset it with other passive income. So let's say you had net income from real estate, that would be netted before the $3,000 loss limitation. Hopefully that helps, but essentially you need to get your Schedule K-1 reported for taxes. I help a lot of people with Schedule K-1s on a call. You can check that out. That link I added if you're interested in getting help with your Schedule K-1. Greg, okay, really the last one. My daughter just started working for a realty company and they told her to start a small business LLC in her name. I don't understand. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend that. First of all, she can't, that doesn't sound right. So it sounds like this company either doesn't know what they're doing because she actually can't. I had a client just going through this and the determination is like she can't even have an LLC and be operating separate from the real estate agent. She can be a contractor for the real estate agent. So go through the training from start to finish from day 1 and sole proprietor is what applies to her. But no, I mean, if sure, she could form a single member LLC, but I don't believe that that's correct from the real estate profession's point of view. So that's something to maybe tell them to check on. But she can definitely be a sole proprietor. You are a sole proprietor if you're paid without a W-2. So if anyone pays you money, $100 to mow a lawn, or a real estate company giving you commissions, you're self-employed. Okay, that's all, guys. Thanks for coming. I hope to see you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Hawaii Standard. All the information is in there when you sign up. Another email will go out later. And I hope to see you then. Otherwise, get caught up, especially day one is super important. I referred to it a lot. But a lot of the technicalities covered in day 2 and 3, and then today are going to be really helpful and answer so many people's questions that come to my website. Okay. Joyce, you're tempting me. If you need to file more than 1 year due to poor accountant, what's the best way to go about it? Well, I have my catch-up back taxes course. If you want to do it yourself, that's there. Okay, guys, I will talk to you next time. And I believe I have some videos on my website specifically about that. Okay, thanks, everyone. Gotta run. Have a great day. Bye. Thanks for participating.